As Southern California is still on fire, all of the prior California problems still remain, of course, primarily theft. In fact, these two things may be interrelated, actually. Arson remains a possible cause for some or even all of the fires, and looting opportunity may have been a motivator. Just got to be very careful not to get those Jordans singed. California voters have had enough, though, and overwhelmingly voted to address the issue themselves by ballot measure in the fall. Proposition 36 increased penalties for theft, including lower value retail thefts. The new law took effect the week before Christmas, though unfortunately, some of its intended targets did not receive the news in time to adjust their behavior.
Seal Beach police are sharing a post on Proposition 36 featuring 3 alleged thieves, and it's gone viral. The video tallies up stolen merchandise at more than $1,600. Then it shows police catching and arresting the women and a brief moment of them in the patrol car realizing the penalty for retail theft just increased.
That's a felony? New laws. Stealing is a felony.
Well, at least with all that makeup, they will be the prettiest girls on the cell block. But the news was also too late to stop what has already been in development for the last year in San Francisco. The closure of a Safeway grocery store in the Fillmore district, now set to happen on February 7th. In announcing the store closure this time last year, Safeway cited rampant theft and corresponding danger to staff and customers, making the continued operation of the business of 40 years no longer possible. And for all the villainizing of Safeway now for what they supposedly owe this community, Safeway actually put up a valiant effort without adequate law enforcement to do it. Safeway tried to stop the theft themselves. They stopped using self-checkout stations, which was where much of the theft was happening. They installed security gates to detect theft, and they started playing music in the parking lot to deter loitering. And for those efforts, Safeway was labeled controversial in local media reports. It's not the theft that's controversial. It's Safeway's attempt to do honest business in a lawless town. That is the real controversy. But the truth is, Safeway was very classy about it. That deterrent music that they played in the parking lot, it was classical. If Safeway actually wanted to bother or burden the community, they could have been way more annoying about it. Imagine if they played congressional confirmation hearings instead. And frankly, whatever they played was courteous, actually, because by the look of it, this store should have had sniper nests with rifles pointed at the parking lot, not just slightly annoying sound to get people to move along. As demonstrated, because it didn't work, Safeway could not stop the theft, and the business reality became unavoidable. You cannot make money when all your stuff is getting stolen and the situation is dangerous. And so Safeway told the city, we're closing up shop. Safeway initially intended to close in March of last year, but in response to the outrage from residents and politicians, Safeway made even more concessions. They agreed to stay open through 2024, almost a year longer than planned. And they weren't even leaving the city with nothing. Safeway found a buyer for the property who intended to convert the 3.5 acres to a mix of new residential and commercial space. But despite the overly kind concessions and the extra effort to do right by the city, no, not good enough, said city leadership. Former city supervisor Dean Preston, who represented this neighborhood but lost his bid for re-election in November, at the time tried to revive an 80s-era plan effectively to force grocery stores to stay open, or at least to create ways to punish them if they close. Preston attempted to pass the Grocery Protection Act, which would have allowed city residents to sue grocers like Safeway if they closed too quickly. To avoid legal liability, grocers would have to give 6 months' notice and meet with city government to develop their exit plan. As I joked at the time, San Francisco is so backward, they don't sue you out of business, they sue you into business, if such a thing is even possible. Or at least they wanted to, but we never got to see this insane theory tested because it never passed through the city board. As I mentioned, this idea is actually an old one, but even way back in '84, then Mayor Dianne Feinstein vetoed it. Even she was wise enough to recognize this is absolute business-killing insanity. So the clock is nearly out of time, and for the last couple weeks of operation, the liquidation sale at Safeway is on. The shelves are empty because the markdowns are so deep, 50% off, 75% off, maybe more as closing day approaches. And those are pretty good discounts, but not quite as good as the prior 100% off that created this closure in the first place. And sure, the situation is understandably upsetting. Residents are quoted all over local media reports expressing their frustration with having to find a new spot to buy their food and basic supplies. If it was my grocery store, I'd be annoyed too. But the question is, annoyed at whom? Annoyed with what? A local NAACP leader is quoted saying, "This is all Safeway's fault, that this is the height of corporate arrogance." Well, it's kind of the height of personal arrogance to think that anybody owes you their goods or services, actually. They only produce and provide them insofar as it's safe and prosperous to do so. If they're held against their will because they supposedly owe you or you supposedly own their labor, there is a word for that, but my understanding is the NAACP doesn't like those circumstances. But to that theme of people owing you stuff regardless of their will, other local activists are marching in the street saying this is not an ask, this is a demand.
We're not playing, we're demanding. We're not requesting, we're demanding. We're not urging you, we're demanding you. And we want all the new supervisors to understand this can be a beautiful relationship or a sour relationship.
Well, it's too bad the guns are banned, because without them, your threats are much less credible, but good luck. At first, I thought they were implicitly threatening Safeway, like stay open or else. In fairness, they're not. They're threatening city leadership.
They're demanding that the Board of Supervisors address the closure of the neighborhood Safeway store. Their goal isn't to keep the Safeway from leaving, rather to add a new grocery store, and they want to be included in the discussions.
Well, if you actually placed your blame on the right people in the first place, the thieves who caused this closure, if you demanded a stop to the theft and tougher law enforcement to stop it, all your grocery worries would be gone, because this store would not be closing, as it hadn't in the 40 prosperous years prior. Or if you simply left this problem to be resolved by the businesses with a direct and accountable interest in the success of the project, that too would probably fix it. But of course, neither of those are the preferred solution. Instead, it's straight to the non-solution, to the only people capable of making it even worse. The government. That's right, since the government refused to stop the thieves, and since the government is still holding up the deal that would allow reconstruction to replace the store with something new, and since all the government has done is threaten people who may actually wish to do business with lawsuits if they don't do that business exactly the way the city says, clearly the solution here is even more government. Let the city supervisors run it.
And Supervisor Mahmood says that he is working with other City Hall departments to ensure food access in the short, medium, and the long term.
Yes, please give us actual government breadlines. That is the demand, or at least something close to that. Despite the willingness of a new buyer, eager to build new housing and business, no. That development plan is still wandering through city regulatory hell, and now local media bemoans the looming vacancy on the property. Oh, it's going to become such a desolate eyesore, as though city government has allowed any other option. Yes, come to San Francisco, where starting a business is impossible, but if you do somehow figure it out, we'll sue you when you don't do it exactly right. And so the activists want the city to use eminent domain to reclaim the property as its own. Please, incompetent government, seize that property and run it even deeper into the ground than you already have. Make it an actual pit of safe injection sites and improvise sewage processing to restore that San Francisco spirit in this neighborhood, as though you'll get anything else. If you expect the government to make you a sandwich or sell you some fresh produce, get ready for the disappointment of inedible moldy bread and wilted lettuce. At best, that's if you get anything at all, other than your demands getting even angrier and even louder, falling on the deafest ears there are. It is amazing how upside down the world can get when we abandon the fundamentals, when we want the government to do actually everything, to be our dad, to be our boss, to be our God, and to give us food and housing and a pony and a unicorn, all of it protected by Bigfoot or any other myth far less ridiculous than the biggest myth of them all, government-provided prosperity. We want all of that and the bag of chips that we can't even buy at the store anymore because government and their thugs chased it away. We just don't want government to do the one and only thing it's actually supposed to secure our rights to provide all of those things for ourselves, and to stop those who threaten them. Until San Francisco finally reaches that elusive philosophical clarity on that point, they will continue exploring the deepest depths or maybe the highest heights of that upside down. Either way, it's going to be a long trip, so hope you packed a lunch, if you can still find one in that town. Thanks as always for listening and for supporting this channel. Always appreciate that thoughtful discussion down below, and especially over on X, that is at ML Christiansen. You're always welcome to coming out and chatting my live streams. Those are live on Wednesday and Sunday nights. Looking forward to it. Goodbye.